evening, good afternoon, good morning, and I welcome you all to the second session of our flagship program, Demystified Leaders Summit. We launched the Leaders Summit last week on September 3rd. At Demystified, we have been working to mobilize dialogue about rebuilding during COVID-19 and beyond. Massive policy efforts to contain the global COVID-19 pandemic continues. Countries are grappling to minimize the impact on the livelihoods of their citizens. The situation is worse in countries with large informal sectors and weak social protection systems, where growing numbers of people lose work without any access to income support. To start with the dialogue, today we have three industry leaders, and our topic is sustainable livelihoods towards an inclusive future. Let me introduce you to our speakers. Professor Sudhir Sinha from IRMA and founder director CSR Incorporation. He is a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, is a crusader of CSR Satyagraha, a CSR reform agenda. Sudhir sir, a lead fellow, has over 36 years of rich experience of working for companies and NGOs on CSR sustainability projects. He headed and managed CSR sustainability verticals of leading Indian and MNC brands. A second speaker, Dr. Nayan Mitra. Dr. Nayan Mitra, she is an international authority on the subject of sustainability, CSR, and corporate governance. Her company, Sustainability Advancements, is a women-led company that broadly aims to promote the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, through advocacy and implementation. Under her leadership, Sustainable Advancements has established itself as a holistic institution of international and national repute in the area of sustainability and corporate social responsibility. This session will be moderated by Ms. Prarthana Borah, who is the India Director of Clean Air Asia, an international not-for-profit headquartered in Manila, working towards better air quality in over 1,000 cities in Asia. Based in New Delhi, Prarthana ma'am leads the implementation of India's strategy of Clean Air Asia, an environmental sustainability strategist with more than 20 years of experience. Prior to joining Clean Air Asia, she has been involved in policy support initiatives of Center for Environmental Education, like preparation of Government of India's policy document on climate-friendly traditional practices of India for the climate COP21 that was released by the Prime Minister of India. I am Shonal Rath, founder of the Demystified initiative and your host for today's session. Before we hear from our speakers, we want to know from you, what are your ideas? How would you support vulnerable communities with sustainable livelihoods? How do you want to do it? Here is a poll. Please vote and let us know. Meanwhile, the poll is on. Let me quickly introduce you to the format of today's session. We have three sections. In the first section, I will ask each panelist 2 questions, and Ms. Prarthana ma'am will be moderating this session. This section will be followed by a poll in the next section. Keep an eye out for them, do vote, and let us know your opinion. Finally, we will take questions from our participants. My request is to all participants, please send and type your questions only in the Q&A section and not on the chat box. So let us start with the session. My first question is for Nayan ma'am. And before that, let us just look at the results for the poll. So the question was that if you want to support vulnerable communities with sustainable livelihood, and that is the topic of our discussion where our leaders will be speaking about today, there have been mixed results. Some feel that help with education is one of the most important things. Financial supports, then mentorship and help with network, and promoting awareness about the need. Education takes the lead amongst all of these opinions. Thank you everyone for participating.
So let us begin with our session. So my first question is for Nayan ma'am. Ma'am, recently you have prepared a paper in partnership with Aspire for Her, Women at Work, which exclusively talked about the loss of job for women during the pandemic. Could you elaborate a bit more about it?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shonal, for organizing this and also for the question, because that's again one of the key questions. That is something of utmost importance now. When we did this research, this was based in 2020 to 21, and just when the COVID had hit, and we were doing this research based on 4 parameters. The 4 parameters were we were looking at the industry sector. That's one. Second was we were looking at the occupational results. Third was on work experience, and the fourth was on hierarchy. So each one, when we were doing the research, we came up with different kinds of results. For example, when we were looking at the industry sector, we found that the self-employed women, they were mostly affected. I mean, over 60% mentioned that they were affected by the pandemic. Now we went on to understand why this happened, and what we realized is when women see, entrepreneurship is a full-time occupation. It is a 24/7 occupation. And when women were also hit by the pandemic at the domestic level, when they had to do other chores and when they were taking care of their children, there was no support system. The husband was at home working, or they had a larger family system, and they had to take care of them. They were greatly hit by this pandemic. And secondly, what happened was mainly most of these women were solo entrepreneurs. And because they were solo entrepreneurs, they did not have a team that could support them when they were taking care of other things. So, this was extremely revealing, especially, and also another thing that happened, why this was also, the magnitude was also so high, was because the startup ecosystem had opened up only, from 2015-16 onwards. So by 2020, there were considerable amount of startups which had mushroomed already. And these are the women who were affected drastically by COVID. So that's one. The other thing also, again, side by side, is again, women also catered to some of the professions, their entrepreneurship, a lot of their entrepreneurship were based around maybe beauty, maybe health, maybe, some of those kind of sectors. And those sectors were greatly affected by the pandemic due to the lockdown, when people did not visit, so to say, did not visit the parlors, did not visit did not take a vacation, were not in the travel sector, and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that all women are in these sectors, but there's a preference for many women to be in these sectors. That's where it was greatly hit. The second, again, when we looked at the work experience part, what we realized is there were 2 extremes who were affected greatly by the pandemic. So one was the 0 to 5 years of experience, which means the freshers who were just getting out of their college and getting into the workspace. They were greatly hit by the pandemic because first, the job market had stalled. So, on one side, they were not getting a job when they wanted to get a job. The second, even if they had got a job, they did not have a physical office, and they did not feel comfortable getting into a virtual office where the engagement was very less. And they were extremely disheartened, and they didn't like. And what we also find is, a lot of women, instead of getting into jobs, they probably selected getting into higher education. So they kind of prolonged their higher education, but they did not want to get into a job situation. So that was another finding. But the 21 to 25 years of age, when they were more or less in the senior level, middle to senior level of age, position in their companies, they had then another different kind of problem, because mostly what we found, these women were they were coming from multi-generational households, okay? And by this time they had all the generations living together, and they did not have a support for, for continuing their work. So that was one. The other one, what also happened, this entire shift into this virtual thing, into technology, that was also kind of hampering their work and work-life balance, both, because they had to learn, relearn, unlearn so many things to get adjusted. So this was a huge finding. Now, if we say that, it's only between 0 to 5 years and 21 to 25 years, again, that's not the case. Even the middle management, the middle sector, and that I will come in the next sector, is the hierarchy. Even the middle level managers were extremely affected because they were stuck between two. First, they had, their pressure was tremendous because on one side they had to supervise the entry level managers. On the other side, they were in constant pressure from the senior level managers. Okay, and they themselves in their lifestyle or in their life cycle stage was going through a very different kind of phase, because most of them had just started family, most of them had young children, and they had again multi-generational families living, and there was no support system, because for working women, support system in India is key. That is kind of what drives women into working, gives them the space to work, and they did not have that support system working from there. Even there was also gender I won't biasness, but there were gender inequality even in that space. Why? Because even in case of getting the Wi-Fi, a simple thing like getting the Wi-Fi. So the women were not getting the Wi-Fi if the husband and the child was using the Wi-Fi for office and school respectively. And another thing what happened was then women started working from maybe afternoon, from 2 p.m. onwards, they started working, went on till late at night, early morning, but they were almost never available during the morning. And I'm talking about all the sectors. So these were some of the very interesting findings that we had received from this research.
Shonal, I'd like to ask a few questions. Can I intervene here now, or do you want to say something first? Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mitra. That was such a, it was such a nice scientific presentation of the work that you did. I think as women, we also had a lot of conversations between ourselves and were part of this entire conversation as working women. And I think the practicalities of what was happening in each household was very evident. It also led to a lot of pressure, mental health issues, balancing happiness of the family vis-a-vis the woman's happiness. So I think these were very, very important findings. And much as we were aware of it, I think it's good to have some scientific data around it. And I think I really applaud this publication, and we would obviously love to share it. But I just have, a few questions, because the first is pertaining to the issue of, the skill development that you talked about. And you said that, women were involved more in the service sector and they were impacted, right? And if you look at the emphasis of the government of India, national government, and the Prime Minister's vision on skill development, there is this whole emphasis that, we need to focus on things like the service sector. The startup, for instance, is a huge area. So I think one of my first questions is to, ask you that, are we looking at some kind of a shift now because of this post-COVID recovery in terms of, looking at more secure jobs where, at least you won't lose your job? That is one. And the other is more in terms of an overall general question. You see, the pandemic is just the beginning, right? And now we see there is this variant coming on, there's another variant coming on, and with climate, with climate-related disasters, we're also seeing other things happening. So I think life is going to change a lot in terms of we don't. This is not the end, and I'm sure we're going to have certain. I mean, God forbid, but not this kind of pandemic. But I think we'll have to learn to live with this kind of a situation where we might be, attacked by these kind of situations. So I'm just wondering, how do we prepare ourselves, especially women, how do we prepare ourselves for this kind of a situation? And if we are going to have this on a regular kind of basis, how does do we look at transitioning to a different kind of a model? And because I know what you mentioned in terms of the challenges. I mean, we talk about work from home, and we talk about a lot of companies transitioning to work from home, and there are positives on that. Like, I come from an air quality background, and it was hailed as the bright way to do things and stop transportation, but nobody really talked about other issues, like you said, if there's a family of 4, the woman would obviously be the one sacrificing the internet, or obviously you can't have 4 connections. So how do you think we need to prepare ourselves in this kind of for a future which is very uncertain?
Yes, thank you, Prarthana. I think this is an extremely relevant question. Again, I come from the sustainability lens. Okay, yeah, so when I speak about sustainability, in sustainability, nothing is fast track. Okay, it's like fast fashion versus slow fashion. So sustainability is basically slow, okay, and long term. The impact is always long term. So the key to what you're saying right now, and this is something which I keep telling everybody, is number 1 is sensitization. Okay, start sensitizing right from the beginning, right from the childhood. I mean, the children at home who are seeing their mothers going through this, or the children at home who are seeing their aunts, or whoever, going through this kind of a phase, should automatically learn, or it should be pointed out that this is not the ideal thing. The ideal thing is, you have to start together. All of us should be in a family situation, work together to support each other. So that's one. Okay, so that's one part. The other part, because you mentioned this model, there is a shift that is happening. And the shift is, this is the meta structure that I'm talking about, is when we started, long back, we started talking about shareholder value. At one point, we were talking about shareholder value, then slowly we moved on to talking about shared value, okay, where, the company, the social structure, and the environment, they had the equal footing. And we were talking that the point where all 3 of them met is the point, which is the sweet spot for sustainability. But the model which is now shifting is towards systems value. And what is the systems value? The systems value is where the company is the smallest entity in the whole ecosystem. And the whole ecosystem is what? Over the company, we have the social structure, and above that, we have the environmental structure, which also means, Prarthana, that the company is becoming smaller and smaller in its, in its size, in its power, in whatever, which also means that when it is growing smaller, then more and more startups will thrive. Okay, more and more startups, and these startups in the nature of responsible businesses will thrive, okay, in this structure. And now when these thrive, which means the woman, when the woman is starting their own enterprises and having a small enterprise which is based on responsible business model, and which also has a business model which is resilient to all of these, it has the technology in place, and it can continue in dire circumstances. That kind of a model is going to stay. We ourselves have seen, and if you look around, Prarthana, Shonal, Sudhir, how much we have changed in our attitudes, in our consumer behavior, right? For example, we all know bakeries and artisanal chocolate makers who whom we just call up and they come and they deliver. Okay, we are not going to the large shops anymore. We are not going to the Fleuries and the Monginis and the Cakes of the world. We are going to the smaller places whom we know, and these people are delivering. Clothes we have seen for everything, clothes, pickles, everything, you name it, and we know somebody who's going. Plants, we know somebody who's going to deliver it, right? And they're doing it in an artisanal scale. It is not a large scale. So this is the model change which is happening, and more women will be a part of this. The reason behind this is women will need to have their flexibility, and this is also a part of that gig economy that will flourish over a period of time, and that's the modular change that will happen.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think it's really heartening to look at the positive side, and we keep looking at the negative side. So it's really very interesting to that this observation that we would have more these smaller startups and industry and more flexibility for the women in the work system. And I think I agree with you. I think there was a lot of smaller businesses that evolved even during the lockdown because of
yes.
the delivery issues, and now we have social media, so it works a lot in terms of communicating your business. So you can immediately get some kind of a support. And I actually wanted to just share one experience that during the lockdown, it was so interesting because I have a dog and we wanted to celebrate the birthday, and there was a there's a very young girl, Shona, like you, who was actually just doing dog birthday party products, and it was done very beautifully. So I think even the innovation aspect, Dr. Mitra, is going to come up, because I think people are going to challenge, and I think, and anyways, I think women are innovative, so we have been tackling issues all the time. So,
adaptable.
Sorry
to the needs, to the small needs.
But I think but I think what Shonal, I think we should also take note of the fact that this whole issue of sensitization and the family coming together and understanding the woman's needs in terms of the workspace and the space that you need, not only in terms of technology but also the time. I think it's important, and that's something probably is an area that needs to be looked at in terms of how we could educate the community in terms of supporting, along with earlier it was about sending women out to work, but now it's also about when women are at home and working, how do you create space for them. So I think
just
was great.
One little thing I will add on to this, which for when this research was launched on 8th of March, and even the director of UN Women, she was there, Nishtha Satyam, she was there, and there was one thing which I mentioned, because we keep on talking about inclusion, okay? But when we talk about inclusion, or when we talk about diversity, and we talk about women integrating into the workspace in a pandemic where nothing is as usual, okay, nothing is normal, which also means that the assumptions have to be very clear. So the assumption is, our society is not providing the space for the woman to work in the morning, okay? Because in the morning, she has to do 100 different things, which the man is not doing, the child is not doing, nobody else in the family is doing. But how can then the office also expects her to log in at 9 a.m. and continue and be 100% productive, if not more, throughout the day? So if your assumption is that we do not have an ecosystem like this yet, and we have to build that ecosystem, which also implies that the office space or the corporate sector should also start the women's work from 2 p.m. onwards. It's a small little change, but it's not just the family which has to change, but also the ecosystem which has to change to include, because here we are talking about inclusion, we are not talking about exclusion. So to include, you have to adapt to what is needed for inclusion.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think that's also a very important area to touch. I think how you could make these small changes. I think this can come through leadership within the sectors, and how, we take these things into consideration. Shonal, we could go on and on the first question. I know you have some other questions, and let's get Sudhir in also, because we've been talking about women. Let's get into the larger space also. So over to you.
So, ma'am, we just have a really innovative point in chat. Mr. Samveet sir says that he is really glad to be part of this lively discussion on sustainability. And yes, women are innovative, and there are no second thoughts about it. And he's glad to be here. So let us move on to Sudhir sir. So, sir, since Dr. Dr. Nayan spoke about some of the challenges that women faced. So you teach rural development at IRMA, and IRMA is empowering rural India and creating a new breed of rural managers. We all know that a majority of vulnerable communities are residing in rural areas. Given the new situations, which is of great concern and more so because of COVID and the lockdown, reverse migration has been much talked about. How are you preparing the rural managers who are the students of IRMA, especially keeping in mind the post-COVID scenario?
First of all, thank you very much, Sunal, for inviting me this afternoon to participate in this discussion. And good afternoon to all my panelists, co-panelists, Dr. Nayan Mitra and Prarthana, and also to those 64 I can see participants are listening to our conversation. So thank you again. With regard to your question, let me just tell you one thing. IRMA in 1979 was initiated, it was started by Dr. Varghese Kurian, keeping in mind that, am I audible? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dr. Varghese Kurian, he decided, or rather he thought, because he was a rural manager, and one rural manager could create one Amul. So that is the power of rural manager. And just thinking that if there would be many more Dr. Kurian, like, rural managers, then definitely India can develop differently. As you can see that today Amul, as one cooperative, milk cooperative, has approximately, I'm talking about, since we are talking about gender, so let me just give you the information that 36 lakh women members are associated with Amul, and this is a big number. And after Amul, now you have many milk cooperative society in our country. And if at all I have to give you another statistics with regard to milk cooperatives, so it is approximately 17% of the total number of cooperatives in India, after the banking sector cooperatives and housing cooperatives. So still, and if I have to give you another information about say cooperative, which I'm talking about, farm cooperatives, it is 3.5%. So what I'm saying that there is a huge scope, because rural India, rural market has not opened up yet. And as you can see that most of the corporate houses now, they are moving to the rural areas, because bottom of the pyramids, so they are basically consumers. And if these consumers who don't have the buying capacity today, definitely it is not going to remain so for a longer period of time. So economy is growing, and these purchasing power of these, the potential consumers also growing. So companies are seeing huge market in rural areas, but they cannot do marketing if their managers are not oriented to rural, rural environment, because the dynamics out there is completely different. Here in urban areas, all of us know what and how our consumers behave, function, right? But in rural areas, it is completely different. So rural managers are needed to know the dynamics of rural areas, because there, you have caste system, you have class system, and all sorts of systems work out there. And another thing from my experience, I can tell you that if you work, since I worked most of my life in, you can say, in tribal area. So the tribal communities are completely different from the normal communities, non-tribal communities living in rural areas. So from that perspective, I think rural managers must know as to what can go well with the rural consumers, you can say, or rural communities. And another thing, these rural managers can create more sort of entrepreneurial social enterprises in rural area, which can be part of the entire ecosystem of the larger or big corporate organizations. And this is what is needed. If at all, also we have to link it to a livelihood, if at all we have to link it to, say, employment in our country, then certainly we need more entrepreneurs who are operating their small enterprises from rural areas. And for that, they need some kind of facilitators, some facilitators. And these rural managers are facilitators, and which is what IRMA is working on for last 40 years, since 9. So IRMA has produced more than 3,500 rural managers, and they have been successfully working in all sectors across the world. Sector when I refer to, so it is corporate sector, it is government sector, and also the development sector. So these managers are successfully operating. Now, another question which you link to COVID. So what is that we are doing? Yes, we immediately we understood the challenges our country is going to face post-COVID. And what is that, and our education system is going to really give them, equip them with in terms of knowledge, and what more can be done. I think change with regard to changes, nothing much going to change. The only changes going to happen is that we used to have, say, before COVID, till 2019, we had said approximately 22% acute poverty, or people living below poverty line. Now, there is a rough estimation that this 22% poverty must have gone post-COVID to over 30%. And because one thing you have to understand, when poor people are lifted above the poverty line, so they remain for some time, at least for 3-4 years, they remain on the margin, and they are highly vulnerable. Anything goes wrong with them, then they slip down to again, below the poverty line. And this is what exactly happened, because a thick band is the population of that people, those who are simply living on the margin. And when reverse migration happened, and especially people who have been working in the informal sector, they suffered a lot for first 6 or 7, 8 months. So they were forced to go back their homes, and which is why they slipped down below the poverty line. Now, so this is one thing, the poverty, and not even World Bank has estimated, and in India also people are estimating, including Dr. Mitra working in that direction. Second is unemployment certainly has gone up. So unemployment has to be addressed. But again, I say that unemployment is not going to be simply addressed by enhancing some Manrega scheme, by giving them opportunity from 100 ensured working days to 150 days. That is simply a temporary makeshift arrangement kind of thing, that for that particular year. Maybe the government can keep on giving, say, other kind of assistance like food and all. But unemployment is nothing or cannot be solved from these sort of measures. Unemployment definitely has those. As I said in the beginning, that there is a need to convert our populations to become entrepreneur, right? More entrepreneur and more social enterprises actually have to happen. Good thing I would say that the government of India is thinking in that direction, and FPOs actually, so now government of India has set up its own target, and FPOs have to be developed. Now they have created a Ministry of Cooperation. So cooperation is going to be given more impetus. I think so. These are some a good move the government of India has made, and we have to really work in that direction. With regard to our students, they are given this knowledge. So if they are moving into the rural areas, then definitely they have to see to strengthen the cooperative movement in India, and also develop, create more FPOs and this kind of enterprising bodies and all. So all these things, and so we are saying. Lastly, I would say that India has a huge opportunity that India can become a human resources hub for the whole world. With our kind of population, the only thing that we need to give more regular training to our budding youth. You can say our youths, not budding, as a youth who can be given different kind of skills so that India can meet the requirements and demands of the whole world. India can supply nurses, which it is doing. India can supply teachers. India can supply engineers. India can supply plumbers. You know, all these kind of things can happen. But I think for that, we have to have more IRMA-like institutions in India. Over to you.
Which actually brings me to my question, because I've been thinking about, this issue. And see, the last 5 years, I moved from more of a rural and, an over-encompassing space to a city space. And I have been slightly disturbed by the focus on cities in terms of, we have a lot of sectoral expertise in the cities. We have, when you talk about climate resilience, you talk very specific to the cities. When you talk about entrepreneurship or, urban planning and development, it's very focused on the cities. And I have these conversations all the time, because even when we talk about air, it's very much focused around the cities. Like if you look at the National Clean Air Program, it's focused on city action plans. So there is nothing to relate it. And when you are actually discussing about Delhi, then it is actually correlated to agriculture, which is also is a major, area. But we have not talked about this whole integrated approach. And I feel that, there's a lot of focus, and understandably, yes, because if you look at, the one of the World Bank reports says that by 2030, almost 48% of India will be living in cities. So I was just thinking, Sudhir, because, we grew up hearing about IRMA, and it was we grew up hearing about the 4 IIMs and IRMA. And even today, when you're talking about education and institution, we hear about a lot of business schools, but we are not hearing equally about the, the rural management space, or the education for rural management, the education for, rural entrepreneurship. And I feel that maybe, that's an area that is an opportunity that we are missing, and we haven't made it attractive enough in terms of making it a career choice for many, which is I just want to challenge you on this and say that, is there a scope to, make it more attractive? Do we need to have more? You did say we need more institutes, but what would you suggest would be some of the strategies to make, people go back and work in India's villages? One. The second is, I feel that a lot of startups are also focusing on very city specific initiatives. A lot of digital is emphasized upon, but, we are not really, we are moving away. And I think during the COVID, one of the sectors that really suffered was the handloom and the, the traditional sectors. So how does a group like ours, look at and discuss and find out a more strategic involvement, maybe engaging larger corporates and increasing the skill set within the rural space, as well as, increasing the opportunities in the rural space?
Okay, so there are 2-3 things which you have said. Number one, and also, yes, I would like to change my mind. I would like to change my statement. Earlier, I said that the country would need more institutions like IRMA. Now, in my change statement, I would like to say we do have institutions, but those institutions have to produce more Dr. Kurians. And the focus should be more on that, not the institution focus. That actually these students, budding managers, and also they have to go. The first thing is that mentally they have to prepare themselves to go into rural areas, work there, serve the communities, and see what changes and transformation they can bring in. The entire, if I'll just give you again, I cite Dr. Kurian. Had he not, and also after returning from the USA, he was offered, he was given jobs in even in the government, which he declined. He simply thought of staying in Anand, and that time Anand was not a grown-up even city or town. It was a small, better village, you can say. So he could foresee that the power he has in can definitely change the fortune of million people, which you can see. I think that is where these are the challenges of our rural managers or managers, those who want to serve the rural community. They must think, and that is where they need a different kind of orientation, so that they are driven by their passion. One question which I asked to my students, why are you here in Irma? Are you here by choice or by chance? So, and the answers are mixed, but unfortunately, because of our education system, now they are getting in institutions like Irma and all by chance, which never used to be another story, say 10 years before. People would come to Irma by choice because they wanted to serve the rural society. So this is where, so then we are changing our even those who have landed up at Irma just by chance. So with our sort of education system, we are successfully changing and making that kind of career. So the career is, so that so they choose it by choice. So this is one thing, and also I would say that all the institutions which are into this thing, management and all, they should definitely make a commitment that they create more rural managers than urban managers. And businesses also would require to hire more rural managers because they are moving in that direction. So this is one thing, and also I wanted to tell you. Second thing, regarding what was that? And also second thing you said, sorry.
I think I talked to you. I asked you if you think that the kind of entrepreneurship ideas need to be more focused, because I talked about I mean there are a lot of focus on digital right now. So
you see, you see, one thing, and also we have to realize by now that if we don't create more entrepreneurs, then we'll not be able to give jobs to many people who are aspiring to be, benefiting themselves. Job creation, so government has limitation to create jobs, and now even the corporate sector, the formal sector, they have limitations to create jobs. Main jobs can be created only through these entrepreneurs and startups, or you can say MSMEs, or this thing. I mean, small enterprises, small, I'm not talking about even mid and big size enterprises. I think small enterprises can create even one chai wala. You can see that one chai wala at least hire 2 persons and gives employment to 2 persons, right? In chai shop. So likewise, even in rural areas, some small enterprising activity starts happening, then they will definitely take care of their own co-villagers who can be accommodated in their enterprises. And this is the only solution now. At this point in time, this is the only solution that India has to really work upon and see that India actually achieve this thing. And otherwise, and also there will be a catastrophe in the sense, because aspirants are looking for 9 to 5 kind of job, which cannot be given to all. So the solution, we are left with is this only. I hope I have answered your question.
Thanks so much, Sudhir. I think, yeah, I mean, we could go on and on, Shonal, on this, and I don't want to, kind of disturb the focus of your discussion. So I'll just hand it over to you now, and maybe you want to ask something.
So we received a message in chat box, and Mr. Okino Joshua, he's from Kampala, Uganda, and he is really glad to be here. His special thanks to Mr. Sudhir sir for his submission and for his recognition for the rural communities. So let's move on in our session. And my next question is for Nayan ma'am. You talked about women and how they were impacted. So apart from women, which other vulnerable communities or any other topics that need to be the focus on for to bring sustainable livelihoods in the global space?
Yes, Shonal, when we talk about inclusion and sustainable livelihood, there are two things, because the two key points are sustainability and the other key point is inclusion, okay? So when we talk about sustainability, the concept of sustainability itself lies in 5 key P's, okay? So the 5 P's are people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. Okay, so all of these 5 things play equally important role when we talk about sustainability and when we talk about sustainable livelihoods. So when we define this livelihood, and we define livelihood with respect to sustainability, which means this livelihood should not only have people, should not only look at prosperity, and mind you, not profit. I'm not looking at profit. We are not looking at profit here. We are looking at prosperity, which is not profit, which is less than profit, okay, which is the holistic happiness index and everything combined. It gives you a lot of yes, happiness, a satisfaction, a lot of satisfaction. That's second. Third is the most important part, which is planet, all right, and peace and partnership. And here, I'm linking my discussion to what Sudhir just said and what Prarthana's question was. When we look at planet and we look at people and prosperity, when we look at planet and when we are looking at people, we are looking basically at, this handcrafted things which are mostly, all of them are sustainable products. The products we grew up with, the khadi cotton, the basket weaving, and, all the things, the wooden things that we have so much. And by God's grace, like India has so much, and they also have that skill set within that community. So the people are already skilled in making the products which are eco-friendly, which are planet-friendly products, right? And they're also happy in their spaces, which is there in that prosperity space. Okay, so all 3 of them are there. The 4th one is peace, and they are also living peacefully in their rural ambience. 5th is partnership, and that partnership is again what Sudhir talked about, cooperative. So when you look at this, small villages, small skill sets, small artisans, small handicraft, these are the spaces where sustainable businesses already are thriving. Okay, the only problem was created with the urban sector, and not only the urban sector, but also with the multinationals. And I'm not going against them, because we were happy with this. We were happy with these kind of products. But what happened is, suddenly from handcrafted things, we wanted mass production. And when the moment we wanted mass production, we wanted, somebody wanted to make a lot of money with mass production and, to curate everything to perfection. That was the problem, because we went, from our need to our greed. The moment we went from need to greed, there was a disconnect, the disconnect between rural and urban, the disconnect, when migration started happening, people came to the urban sector and there was so much. And here, because, you were talking about another sector, this migration, migration and reverse migration, and we have seen both. Any kind of migration is trouble. Of course, economists would say that it brings in economic development and it is only natural and so on and so forth. But yes, there is trouble whenever there is migration, because when there is unplanned migration, then somewhere somebody is not ready to kind of include this migratory population. Okay, even birds, when they migrate, they go back. Okay, because that space is not for them, so they have to go back at some point, and they can come back again, but they have to go back, right? Because that is not their place. The ecosystem is not built for them. That ecosystem cannot handle that additional pressure. And that is exactly what these problems are. Unsafe migration. Through unsafe migration, there is trafficking. Okay, and this is one space where I have also worked for a decent, fairly long period of time. A lot of one of the key causes of trafficking of women and children, and for various reasons, for either it's for sex trafficking or for trafficking for forced labor, happens because of this unsafe migration. They're lost, and you can't. And this is the same thing what we have seen last year in 2020. So, when we are talking, so this is about sustainable livelihoods and for the inclusive future, and what we are looking at. Yes, we have to build those cooperatives at the local levels. We have to empower those local levels so that, they have, they can create and co-create with others. We need specific point of contacts at other levels, at market linkage, so that the design and the market linkage that happens, and then take it forward and take it forward from there. So it has to be the model, the entire model that has to be kind of built. Again, as you have already understood that I like speaking about the positive things. So the positive thing that happened last year is that, people had to go back, okay? So because people went back, and they went back with all the experience and the knowledge and the wisdom of having lived in an urban sector. So when they went to rural villages, now they have individually become entrepreneurs. They are enterprising people. In India, everybody is enterprising. You can look around, every small shop has an enterprising people who's kind of created this shop out of nothing. And there are storms, there are thunders, there are whatever, they break and they're resilient. They break, they create again, and they recreate again, and they just change. In COVID, I'll give you one small example. COVID times, we have this electrician in our neighborhood. Now, he did not have any work to do because nobody was entertaining him at their home during COVID times. He started a vegetable shop. And not only he started a vegetable shop overnight, he was there every day, and he survived. It was not that he collapsed in the pressure because he was only skilled as an electrician and he could not do anything else. He survived. So this is how I'm talking about 2 to 3 things. So one, I'm talking about enterprising people, and which is there within us. The other thing, again, I'm talking about being adaptive to changing situation. So, we are not just linked to one thing, but we are also adapting to whatever life throws at us. So resilience.
Shonal, I must thank you that you made me part of this discussion, because the environmental spaces, you don't see results, so it tends to become morbid at times, and we all keep talking about the problems. And this is so fantastic that both Sudhir and Dr. Mitra has been giving us such a lot of positive inputs as to how to look at some of the things that are happening around us, because it's been a difficult year for everyone. I mean, difficult 2 years for everyone, and I think this is a great dialogue to start the process of recovery. So so Dr. Mitra, I'm just going to shift the discussion slightly. Shonal, you have to keep track on time and tell me how much time we have, but just before we go on to the next part, I just wanted to talk about something which which we, we link this debate to what's happening in the global space. And, we have climate goals and we have air pollution goals and all, but we also have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I know that Dr. Mitra has worked very extensively with the SDGs. And I think you talked about the 5 Ps, the people, planet, prosperity, partnerships, and peace. And somehow the SDGs bring this together. And it's a great set of goals for, countries to make a target. And I was reading something today because I was, going to be talking to you, and I saw that, in 2021, India like has increased from has a 6-point increase in the Niti Aayog dashboard as far as achieving SDGs is concerned. But there's also a very discussion going on the sidelines, a morbid discussion that because of COVID, the SDG recovery, the whole SDG achievement process will be delayed. So I just wanted to understand that, do you think we need some kind of a restructuring of, or, we need some, some ways of looking at the, the achievement goals for SDGs slightly differently now in terms of what you just mentioned? Do we need to look at alternative spaces, or do we need to look at any kind of different kind of programs that we can integrate within, which would help achieve SDGs? If you can just throw some light on that area.
Yeah. Thank you, Prarthana. You mentioned this. I'll just again share a small anecdote. That I do a number of trainings on this issue. So even in 2019 October, I was invited, and I'm not telling the name, but I was invited, and I was training some of the top management teams of the nation. Okay. And so I was training on CSR, corporate social responsibility. And then at one point I moved on to sustainable development goals, which was natural. And it was 2019, which also meant that, the SDGs have been in action for over, and October 2019. So almost about for 40, 3 years plus, 3 years. When I started talking about the SDGs, the TMT said, we don't want to know about SDGs because we are here to know about CSR. And that's all we want to know. And that was 2019, October. 2020, when the next, the same set of, training was happening, then there was a special note which wanted me to speak only on SDGs and then go to CSR. So not from CSR to SDGs, but SDGs to CSR. Okay, so that was the reverse migration again that happened in 2020. 2021, again, things have changed. So Prarthana, coming directly to what you said, right now, for India, everything has to start with awareness, okay? Because awareness, interest, desire, action, okay? For action to happen, the first 3 stages have to happen. The good part is that awareness, there was no awareness even 2 years back. But now the awareness has started to happen. There is interest, and there are micro enterprises which are growing and who are nurturing this. And the government has a buy-in into nurturing this ecosystem of growth, which is growing for SDG, which is pro SDG, SDG. The other thing again is, and that's very exciting, and that this is something which I keep telling at all forums, that India already has pro SDG traditions and cultures, okay, which they already have. The only thing that we have is we need, all stakeholders to speak and the same language and to connect with each other to nurture this space. The only thing that we did not have was economics linked to SDG practices. The moment that economics will be linked to SDG practices, it's like a treasure box, a treasure box that opens up, and there's no stopping because it's ingrained into our culture. It is ingrained into some of the practices that we already do. It's only a matter of time. The only thing that we need is, yes, the policy buy-ins and the large corporate buy-ins. And when these things happen, then the rest at the bottom level is actually they're ready. I'm saying the bottom level because it's actually right now the bottom up approach. The bottom up approach, the bottom is actually ready. now we have to have the buy-ins at these stakeholder levels who can then work in the spaces.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a great opportunity for the country because we are already, we already have this whole space to work on. So I think the shift in terms of looking at some of these areas, like, I mean, there's this whole concept of ecological restoration that we're talking about now in the global space. But if you look at it from the Indian practices, I think there is already some ways of, which can be actually scaled up and talked about and made aware. So I think those kind of things we should look at as opportunities in terms of achieving the SDGs. And I think for us as a country, we should look at it more positively and think that maybe we need to look at these intervention areas, and this would actually speed in the process of achieving the SDGs. Shonal, I think if you have
Prarthana, Prarthana, can I just take forward Dr. Mitra's point?
Sure.
You said quickly, I just give you the information that 2019 UNGC, United Nations Global Compact, in partnership with Accenture, they did a study. They surveyed out more than 1,000 company CEOs and just a couple of points which I would like to share for the benefit of the participants. That 99% CEOs, in their responses to the question, how important are sustainability issues to the future success of your business? So 99% of CEOs from companies, together, I think so more than 1 billion annual revenues or even less than 1 billion revenues, they say that it is very important to the future success of their business. Whereas only 21% of CEOs, so they believe business is currently playing a critical role in contributing to the global business. I think so. This is a gap when they understand that 99% say that but only 21% contributing to the goal, right? So this is the scenario we are living with, and this 21% definitely has to be 100% someday. So I just wanted to add to the points which Dr. Mitra said.
Yeah, I think this is a very valid point, and due to the positive time, we weren't able to touch on it today. But I think the role of business and corporates in achieving SDGs or even achieving general sustainability is very important. And I think we really need to find a model the way we have found for the urban space, for instance, the PPP model, where you have this kind of partnerships for the rural sector would really kind of help in creating the opportunity that we are talking about in this discussion. So I think it's a very valid point. Thanks, Sudhir, for bringing it up. But I'd just like to move on just now. And Shonal, if you have anything else to discuss.
Yes, actually, sir, I was just about to ask you about what role does businesses play, and you just, I think, answered it. But sir, just to add on to it, so what would your recommendation be for these businesses to ensure sustainable livelihood for their employees and for population as a whole?
Is it before I come to business, I would definitely like to put finger on ourselves only. We are consumer, and then as consumers, we have to be responsible consumers, because it is a fashion, or it is a kind of thing, so we always find businesses a soft target, and then we put all the blames on businesses, which is unfair. Ultimately, businesses are meeting the demands which we create as consumers, right? So that is where, so I would definitely like to make an appeal to all of us, including me and you and everyone, that we must, work towards becoming a responsible consumer, so that we lessen the burden of CO2 emission and other environmental impacts on our earth. And as you know that, this Overshoot Day, Earth Overshoot Day, that is a matter of concern, that it is every year it is going up and up. And so now this year, and only year, so we had the Earth Overshoot Day was in September last year. And why? Only because it was the impact of COVID. COVID did not allow us to go out and buy and become an irresponsible consumer. But coming to businesses, what role they can play? Businesses, definitely, they cannot run away from their responsibility. But in the discussions of corporate social responsibility and sustainable development, the focus more is on S factor of corporate social responsibility. S factor is, when I say S factor, then definitely it is charity and philanthropy, and which is what actually giving them kind of certification to call themselves socially responsible company, which is not. The R factor actually, so they are forgetting responsibility because they need to understand that they are creating impacts and range of impacts on range of stakeholders. And from that perspective, I think companies have only one responsibility if they can reduce or mitigate those impacts on the environment, on people. On the environment, it is very clear. Now we have the AR6 report, assessment report 6 of IPCC, which is very scary, that by 2035 definitely temperature is going to go up by 1.5 degrees Celsius, and by 2060 it will be 2 degrees Celsius. So this is something for all of us, including corporate, government, and individuals, to understand the seriousness of it. Now, this is on the environmental side, but on the people side, it's not only the community needs some kind of services. Corporates definitely have to take care of their employees and employees in supply chain, and whosoever are getting impacted, definitely they have to take care of it. And of course, the society at large is. I just cite one example. Post-COVID, what happened? As we know that, even the media has reported that this company or X company or Y company has donated 500 crores or 200 crores or 100 crores. That sounds great, that okay, this company, this entrepreneur or this promoter has donated, right? So, but if you go really deep into it, they have not done any favor. What they have done, they simply have diverted their CSR fund, which they were supposed to spend, and it was their prior commitment, which they had to do it, but they simply maneuvered those money and shifted away or transferred to Prime Minister's care funds or other funds like that. I think this kind of pandemic comes to, or the world faces once in 100 years, once in century. I think this is where the companies had to come with big heart and say that those 2% are going to be untouched because those are prior commitment, and we are not going to actually run away or take away those money. We are going to put another 2% for next 2 years to meet the requirements that government will require. Government, of course, will require, because there is a huge resources deficit. And two professors, economic professors from Harvard, in fact, they have made assessment for their own country, means the USA. USA today, which has they assessed the losses, which was worth $14 trillion, right? $14 trillion, the loss, definitely even for a country like USA, is difficult to mobilize that much of resources just to meet the losses. And then you have to take the recovery work also and then improve. Here in India, the same thing. I think all the businessmen across the world, be it be it America or Europe or India, they did not do their bit, especially contributing to combating the pandemic. They could have definitely shown big heart and done better. Over to you.
Sonal, do you want to respond to Sudhir?
Thank you, sir. I think this was really insightful. I mean, we talk about businesses and, coming on to individuals. I mean, it is individuals who form these principles. I think.
Sorry, Sonal, one more thing, so I would like to comment because I did a small study again. Corporate social responsibility, 2%. Somehow I'm feeling that it is becoming a kind of social tax sort of thing, because in last 1 year, we have seen 8 to 9 amendments being made just to accommodate the comfort of corporates to, contribute to pandemic care things, right? And this is what is really very disturbing for me, at least, and so as a professional, I find that it is moving towards governmentalization of CSR. Ultimately, government is controlling the entire things, governing CSR as to how it has to happen. And this is where so I would like to draw attention to the government of India that they should not interfere or intervene in CSR. Let CSR remain, even if 2% they have given the mandate, let that 2% be voluntarily within the power of the corporates as to how they want to spend it. I think Dr. Mitra can also throw light on this, but I'm saying just the CSR is being is moving towards kind of becoming a social tax sort of thing.
Thank you, sir. So moving on with our session, ma'am, Prarthana ma'am, I have one question for you. Since you come from the climate background, could you talk about green jobs? And before that, we would like to conduct a poll by the participants, what they feel, and then ma'am being the expert, she could talk about it.
So do I wait for the poll to be over?
Yes, ma'am. Before the poll, could you take up questions from our participants? They are very excited.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions here. So the first is on what does the panelists think about the public perception of climate change, talking about sustainability, upliftment of poverty, and the impact of actions at the Dr. Mitra, would you like to take that? Just touch upon these areas like climate change, upliftment of poverty. I think we talked about it, but probably
we talked about it, and these are all very connected. As when we talked about sustainability, upliftment of poverty, and impact of actions at the individual level. Again, when we talk about sustainability, we talked about the 5 Ps, where the moment we take care of those 5 Ps, this upliftment of poverty, and all of these will be taken care of. When we talk about individuals, yes, again, the most important thing right now is, we keep talking about CSR, but ideally, the focus right now to be on ISR, which is individual social responsibility. And that's exactly what, SDGs also talk about. They talk about it being not only integrated, universal, and transparent, but they also talk about breaking the silos within individuals to communities and along all the other stakeholders, institutional stakeholders like the government, the civil societies, the corporates, the academics, all of us speaking together for a common, meeting the common goal. And the most important part here is there is no other option, because there is no other planet. And we are running against time for this.
Yeah, that's really a very comprehensive way of giving an answer to so many issues that were brought up. I think I'll just have time for one more question, which I think Sudhir would like to answer that, because by looking at the question, I know it's his interest and forte. So Sudhir, the question says, post-COVID, the way we see life has changed, especially for young adults. From that perspective, what would be three key advice that you would propose for the younger generation to participate more actively in sustainability activities? Very much your area.
It's a very complex question to answer.
Yeah, but I'm sure you'll have some.
Yeah. specific expectations from young generation, definitely they have to understand their responsibility, because it is they who are going to suffer the most. In our lifetime, so today I'm 61, so maybe, so another 20 years or something I can live on, but they have to live full life, and also their offsprings. So they have to understand that the baton is being passed on to them to take it forward, so that they contribute. So they have to contribute more to sustainability. Second thing is that youths who are bigger consumer segment. And when I go to any malls, I find so youths here and there. So you have. And if I have to take my observation from my visit to different malls, then I see that who are going to actually be responsible for the future. So youth definitely have to take this responsibility on themselves, that they have to go very, very responsible. Third thing, I would say that they need to visit, revisit, and revisit again the kind of things happening in and around, and see as to what they can do. As Prarthana, you remember that, so both of us tried together to work for children, where so we wanted that children should be fully sensitized under Nayan Mitra and becomes a green leader, right? So it is not about green leader now, they have to become now sustainability leader, and the youths definitely have that power, that and will to do. I think so. Youths today, they are different from our generation. They have better will to do today, and if they determine, then definitely they can achieve. And third thing, I would say that it is about recalibration of the strategy and see the government, policymakers, so how they can join. I would definitely like to encourage youths, more and more youths joining politics, so that they can bring some changes in policy making. So policy making definitely wants some youth. And when I see some young politicians today, you see their language is completely different from the older generations. And they understand the sustainability, the challenges of sustainability better than older generation politicians would. So I would say that so these are some of the things I would definitely like to, and they have to keep in mind one thing, that by 2030 we have to achieve sustainable development goals, and especially India. If India fails, then whole world will fail. So the responsibility on India is bigger than any other countries in the world would have. And by 2030, our projection says that the population, world population, is going to be somewhere around 7.8 to 8.5 billion people. And if that happens, then we will require 50% more food, 45% more energy, 30% more water, of course, from 2012 base level, but that will be required. And this they have to understand, and they have to see as to what they are going to do and how they are going to achieve this thing. So responsibility is huge, humongous on youth, and which is why I'm very hopeful. Person like Shonal Rath, so she is a new ambassador. So when she says that, so she is working on this. Kudos to her, and I'm sure that many youth like Shonal will come forward through these kind of initiatives and participate. And which is this is one indicator I'm quite hopeful that so these young boys and girls are going to take their responsibility. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Sudhir. And Shonal, do we have time for more questions? Otherwise, I will try and answer what you have asked me, because I think there's also a related question on that. So do you want me to take any other questions? There are a couple of questions, but I don't know if you have time to take all of that.
So, ma'am, so since everybody here, all our participants believe that green jobs plays a key role in employment for the communities. So, ma'am, could you share and discuss more about it? What do you feel?
Sure, sure. I think, and there's also a question which says, hello, Prarthana ma'am, how do you want the society to be aware of such greenwashing differences? What is a green job exactly? So I think it's not an easy question to answer because, the entire concept of environment has become unfortunately very fragmented today. And we talk about the climate change as a specialization, we talk about ecological restoration, we talk about circular economy, and we have these very specialized sectors which have developed. And unfortunately, while I am very much for specialists, I think we also need the integrated approach as far as the whole issue of environmental conservation is concerned. And for traditional environmentalists like me, I mean, I grew up thinking about the whole issue of conservation as conservation of resources, and we start with that. And I think Sudhir has been coming back to it constantly, saying that we cannot blame production only if we are not looking at the consumption side, right? So I think we cannot say that we are creating a green job if we are creating a plantation to offset pollution in a particular area. So you are creating a specific plantation in a space by somebody who's very conscious about the environment, but at the same time you are actually having a highly polluting industry which is releasing effluents into the same river that will flow through the area where you have done the forest restoration, or the forest development. So I think one of the things that when we are discussing green jobs and skilling and capacity building, and I think Sudhir brought this up right in the beginning in terms of the whole idea of the vision of IRMA, of an institute like IRMA, is how do we look at people develop jobs which actually also support this integrated approach. And it's when we're talking about green jobs, it's not about just creating a job that helps you kind of create an adaptation mechanism, because adaptation is only a short-term thing, but we have to look at the mitigation aspects. So whether it's climate change or air pollution or water, I think we've become very used to using the terminology of skilling and green jobs from an adaptation perspective, which is not the right way to do it, because we will have to at some point of time stop. We can't just reduce, we will have to substantially reduce, or at least stop, if we want to even survive. So I think that's one of the angles to look at. And I could go on into specifics, but I think that is one jobs. The other is, I think Sudhir spoke about this whole emphasis on youth, and I think because this is led by Shonal, who is who has brought us together, and I think we need to encourage this kind of initiative. And I think during the discussion, I was taking notes on a few words that came out, and some of the words that I really feel, which are very close to my heart also, is the word passion. Developing your career around passion, and this passion, if driven by an environmental sustainability issue, I think that's going to be the best job that you have. The second is change, transformation. How do we bring transformation? I think if young people like yourself think about it from the from that perspective, I think we would be doing a lot of good things for the planet. The shifting, when we are shifting to so we don't really only focus on this whole biological urge, as I use the word BUY when I talk about biological, like we keep wanting to buy things, but we realized during the pandemic that how much do we need actually. All those 24 shoes was just lying in the cupboard, and 2 years later they are broken and spoiled because they were lying in it. So how do we actually look at the consumption? And this is where probably the youth can be a large driver in terms of driving change. And I think finally, small differences matter. I think, we need more dialogue on what can happen more in the rural space, more with vulnerable communities, the more with the the communities who are suffering at the moment, more, because see, look at the mountain community, for instance, they are the ones who have to shift in terms of the ecological systems, because they live in this small, their needs are lesser. And so how do we look at some of these areas, making small differences, looking at specific communities? And finally, I think the whole issue of partnerships, because I think we cannot ignore, say, the corporates or the governments. So neither one or the other is going to be able to drive change. What we actually need is, a very coherent, partnerships where everybody is contributing, because ultimately, I think that we all need the planet. The planet doesn't need us. So I think we need to be very clear about that. And if we are going to really, if you want to survive, and if you want, say, our youth to survive and our children to have better lives, I think it's very important for us to understand that it's whatever action we take should be driven by the fact that it needs to benefit the planet.
Can I supplement Prarthana on green job?
Yes, please.
Do you have one minute? Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think Akriti has asked this question, so I would definitely like to answer. A green job, again, these are terminologies which we are using, and that is taking us away from the core objectives. What I understand, my perception of green job is simply I have to see what my carbon footprinting is. So if on a job, if I am using, say, water, or what is the kind of electricity load I'm creating, can I reduce them? And everyone, if start working towards reducing the carbon footprinting, then that is what actually that job can become green job.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I think that's a great summarization.
So that's my perspective.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Over to you, Sonal.
Yes, sir. So before we close, on behalf of the Demystified team, I would like to thank all our panelists and Ms. Prarthana ma'am for such beautiful moderation. I want to thank all participants for their presence, for staying with us all this time. And a big thanks to everyone who helped us in organizing this session. It was indeed a very useful session, and it helps professionals and youth like us on post-COVID rebuilding. And that is how we aim to demystify all these topics. So see you everyone next Friday on our third session of Demystified Initiatives Leaders Summit, and we will bring new leaders and demystify answers to some of these issues that the vulnerable communities are facing. Follow us on our social media pages for updates, and let's work together for an inclusive future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sonal.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.